life is a journey filled with changes. From childhood, we go through various phases, each with its own needs and priorities. During youth, friendships seem essential. Having a group of people around, sharing experiences, going out to meetups, parties, and social events gives us a sense of belonging. However, as the years go by, this need changes. By the age of 70, many people begin to realize something fundamental. Loneliness is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it can be a gift. If you've already passed 70 or are approaching this phase, you may have noticed that your priorities are different from what they were years ago. You might have wondered whether you should continue cultivating friendships the same way you did before, or if, perhaps, it's time to face life in a new, more independent way. The truth is that society makes us believe that we need to be surrounded by people to be happy. But is that really true? After so many years of experiences, challenges, and learning, do we still need the validation of others to feel complete? This video is not about loneliness or isolation. On the contrary, it's about liberation. Let's explore together why. After 70, you can live with more lightness, peace, and happiness without the need to maintain a large network of friends around you. This doesn't mean you'll never talk to anyone again, or that you need to completely distance yourself from people. Rather, it's about understanding that friendships, as valuable as they may be, can become a burden when maintained out of habit or obligation. And most importantly, you may discover that, in fact, you don't need friends to live well and be happy. Imagine for a moment that you could live your days exactly as you wish, without worrying about maintaining ties out of convenience. Think of all the times you felt you needed to call someone, send a message, or accept an invitation just because it was expected of you. Now, imagine freeing yourself from that kind of pressure and having total freedom to choose when and with whom you want to connect. This doesn't mean cutting ties with the people who truly matter, but rather learning to value yourself more. Another important point to consider is that many friendships throughout life are not eternal. Some people pass through our lives at specific moments, help us grow, and then move on. Trying to keep all friendships intact over the years can be exhausting and often frustrating. Not everyone reciprocates in the same way, and this can lead to unnecessary disappointments. It's natural that, over time, some connections fade, and that's okay. What really matters is what those relationships meant in the past and what you can take from them into the future. Moreover, there's a fundamental factor to consider: self-awareness. After 70, you've already gone through many experiences, faced challenges, and gained enough wisdom to know what truly makes you happy. Does maintaining certain friendships still make sense for the person you are today? Or do some of them just take up space in your life without adding real value? If you reflect deeply on this, you may come to the conclusion that the best company you can have at this moment is your own. Throughout this video, we'll explore 7 reasons why you don't need friends after 70. Each of these reasons can bring a new perspective, helping you understand that living well doesn't depend on maintaining an active social circle. In fact, it may be the opposite. Living well could mean having more time for yourself, your passions, and enjoying each moment as fully as possible. Stay with me until the end, because this may be the insight that changes how you view this phase of life. Now, let's dive into the first reason. 1. Freedom to be. Who you want to be, freedom is one of life's greatest gifts, and few people truly understand its meaning until they reach a certain age. During youth and even middle age, there's always a concern about fitting in. What will others think? Am I behaving the right way? Will I be accepted by the group? These questions follow many people throughout life, shaping their choices, attitudes, and even their opinions. But after 70,
if balancing your sugar levels feels like a constant struggle, or diabetes worries keep you up at night, Glucose 6 is the solution you've been searching for. Thousands transformed, healthier lives achieved. Glucose 6, a one-of-a-kind product, has changed the lives of thousands, helping them achieve better blood sugar levels and healthier lives. Glucose 6, your solution to balanced sugar levels. Order now for a healthier tomorrow.
If you want to learn more about this powerful formula that is transforming the health of men and women over 50, check the first pinned comment below this video. Or pause the video now and point your phone's camera at the QR code on the screen.
Something incredible happens. You realize that you no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Without the pressure of maintaining friendships out of convenience, you gain a valuable gift: the freedom to be who you truly are. This means you can speak your mind without worrying about pleasing or displeasing others. You can choose how to spend your time without needing to justify your choices. If one day you want to wake up early and walk in the park, great. If the next day you prefer to sleep in and spend the morning reading a book, perfect. You no longer need to follow others' rhythms, just your own. Many people spend their entire lives trying to fit into groups, trying to meet others' expectations. If you look back, you might remember how many times you accepted invitations to events you didn't want to attend. How many times you said yes when you wanted to say no, just to avoid conflict or maintain a friendship. But now, with all the experience and maturity life has given you, you can simply decide not to do anything out of obligation. You can be whoever you want to be, without needing anyone's approval. Think of someone who spent decades being shaped by social pressures. Let's call this person Carlos. Throughout his adult life, Carlos tried to maintain a large circle of friends. He was always available for conversations, meetups, birthdays, and events, even when he didn't want to go. But when he turned 72, he realized something. Many of these friends were just acquaintances. The conversations were repetitive. The meetups were exhausting, and most of the time he left these interactions feeling drained rather than refreshed. So he made a simple but transformative decision. He stopped worrying about others' opinions and started living the way he truly wanted. This change was liberating. Without the need to maintain appearances or please everyone, Carlos began to live more authentically. He started wearing what he wanted, without caring about trends. He stopped worrying about what people will think if I don't call, and only reached out to people when he genuinely felt like it. He discovered new hobbies, explored his own interests, and, for the first time in a long time, he felt truly free. And this freedom is something anyone can achieve. You just need to realize that you no longer need others' validation to live well. And living well is also a sign of energy. If you've been feeling tired, did you know that could be a sign of your blood sugar levels? In your later years, you can't play around with blood sugar. Diabetes in old age is serious and must be managed. If you want to know how, check the pinned comment. You've already been through so much in life, you've learned what truly matters, and now you can finally enjoy each moment being exactly who you want to be. 2. Focus on quality, not quantity. As the years go by, we learn a great lesson about relationships. It's not the number of friends that matters, but the quality of the connections we cultivate. During youth, many people worry about having a large social circle. They want to be popular, surrounded by people, always having someone to go out with or talk to, but after 70, this mindset begins to change. Life teaches us that having many friends doesn't mean having good friendships. Over time, we realize that some friendships were superficial. Many were maintained out of convenience. Work colleagues, neighbors we chatted with out of politeness, acquaintances who were present at events but never had a real connection with us. And when life changes, when social commitments decrease and routines shift, many of these people simply disappear. And that's not a bad thing. On the contrary, it's an opportunity to rethink which friendships are truly worth it. Having fewer friends means you can focus on those who truly make a difference in your life. Think about it. Would you rather have 10 acquaintances who only show up at specific moments, or 1 or 2 people who genuinely care about you? The answer may seem obvious, but often people cling to the number of friendships, thinking that more is better. However, the reality is that true friendships are rare, and those are the ones we should invest in. Let's imagine the story of Helena, a 75-year-old woman. For most of her life, she maintained a large group of friends. She always had someone to call, go out with, or talk to. But over time, she realized that many of these relationships were maintained more out of habit than genuine connection. Some people only reached out when they needed something. Others kept in touch, but the conversations were empty, without real interest. This made Helena start to wonder how many of these people truly cared about her. That's when she decided to make a change. Instead of trying to stay in touch with everyone, she started valuing only the friendships that truly mattered. She realized there was a longtime friend, Marta, with whom she always had sincere conversations and enjoyable moments. Instead of spending her energy trying to maintain dozens of superficial connections, she began to dedicate herself to this genuine friendship. And you know what happened? She felt happier and less overwhelmed. The truth is, after 70, what really matters are the relationships that bring peace, joy, and true companionship. There's no need to maintain a large group of friends if most of those interactions don't add anything to your life. Fewer friends, but deeper friendships. That's the true secret to a lighter and more enjoyable social life. 3. Inner peace is worth more than social conflicts. As the years go by, we realize that inner peace becomes one of the most valuable things we can achieve. During youth and even adulthood, we spend a lot of energy trying to resolve conflicts, deal with disagreements, and maintain relationships that often bring us more stress than happiness. But when we reach 70, an important question arises. Is it really worth continuing to invest time and effort in friendships that bring more turbulence than tranquility? The truth is that many relationships come with unnecessary conflicts. Disagreements over small things, conversations filled with complaints, gossip, and negativity. All of this can drain our emotional energy without us even realizing it. With maturity, we learn that silence and peace are worth much more than pointless arguments. There's no longer a need to get involved in social dramas, to try to please everyone, or to worry about disputes that, in the end, lead nowhere. Let's think about the story of João, a 73-year-old man who spent much of his life trying to maintain friendships, even when those relationships became difficult. He was always the type who wanted to help, who tried to mediate conflicts and be there for everyone. But over time, he began to realize that many of these friendships were a burden. There was always someone complaining, always someone bringing problems, always someone expecting more than he could offer. And this started to affect his emotional health. That's when João made a transformative decision. He chose peace. Gradually, he began to distance himself from friendships that didn't add anything positive to his life. He stopped insisting on relationships that were a source of stress and focused only on what made him feel good. The result? Less worry, more lightness, and a much calmer life. He realized he no longer needed to prove anything to anyone, and that he could live his days without getting involved in unnecessary conflicts. This doesn't mean he isolated himself from the world. Quite the opposite. He simply started choosing more carefully who he spent his time and energy on. Instead of long conversations filled with complaints and demands, he began to enjoy simple, genuine moments. He discovered that being at peace with oneself is much more valuable than maintaining friendships that drain energy. The big lesson here is simple. After 70, your well-being should be a priority. If a friendship causes more stress than joy, maybe it's time to rethink whether it's truly worth it. When we let go of unnecessary conflicts, we make room for something much more important: the tranquility and serenity that come with a life, free from social ties that don't serve us. 4. Opportunity to rediscover yourself after 70. Life offers a unique opportunity, the chance to rediscover yourself. For much of our existence, we're busy with responsibilities: work, family, friends, social commitments. We're always on the move, always attentive to what others expect from us. But there comes a time when this pressure diminishes, and if we know how to take advantage of it, we can reconnect with who we truly are, without the distractions and external influences that once shaped our choices. Without the need to maintain a large social network or spend energy trying to please others, a precious space opens up to look inward and ask yourself, what do I really enjoy? What makes me happy? What have I always wanted to do but never had time for? Often, throughout life, we set aside our own interests to meet others' expectations. But now, with fewer social ties to manage, you have the freedom to explore new passions or revisit old ones. Think of Laura, a 74-year-old woman who spent decades taking care of her family and friends, always putting others' needs above her own. She was the person everyone turned to when they needed advice, a shoulder to lean on, or just a favor. However, over time, she realized that few of these people truly reciprocated her care. When she found herself with more free time and fewer social commitments, she initially felt a void. After all, she had spent so much time dedicated to others that she wondered, who am I beyond these relationships? That's when Laura decided to use this moment to rediscover herself. She returned to painting, something she loved in her youth but had abandoned due to lack of time. She signed up for dance classes, something she had always wanted to try but never had the courage to do. She started traveling alone to places she had dreamed of visiting, without depending on anyone's company. And, to her surprise, she didn't feel lonely. She felt free. Without the obligation to maintain friendships that didn't add anything to her life, she found the best company of all, her own. This phase of life can be a true rediscovery, a time to try new things without the influence or judgment of others. Without the need to fit into social groups, you can finally dedicate yourself to what truly makes you happy. You can learn a new language, start a hobby you've always wanted, to try, practice exercise in a more relaxed way, invest in your well-being. The point is simple. Now you have time to be whoever you want, without constraints. Rediscovering yourself is a gift that can only be fully appreciated when we let go of the pressure to maintain friendships that no longer make sense. When we stop spending energy trying to maintain ties that don't nourish us, we gain space for something much more valuable, the reunion with our own desires, dreams, and passions. 5. Fewer expectations. More happiness. One of the greatest sources of frustration in life is unmet expectations. We expect people to act in a certain way, for friends to always be available, for relationships to be reciprocal, and for everyone to share the same dedication we offer. But in reality, this doesn't always happen. And after 70, the time comes to ask yourself, is it worth continuing to create expectations of others? Or is it better to live more lightly and detached? The answer becomes clear when we realize that the fewer expectations we have, the happier we become. When we stop expecting others to behave in a certain way, we stop being disappointed. When we accept that not all friendships are eternal and that each person has their own path, we avoid the weight of frustration. And most importantly, when we stop depending on others to feel good, we discover that happiness comes from within, not from external relationships. Let's think about Roberto, a 76-year-old man who always valued his friendships. For years, he made a point of calling his friends, arranging meetups, and being there whenever someone needed him. But over time, he noticed that many of these people didn't reciprocate his efforts. He wondered, why am I always the one who has to keep in touch? Are these friendships really genuine? With every unanswered call, every canceled meetup, his frustration grew. Until one day, he made a simple but transformative decision. He stopped creating expectations of others. He decided that from then on, he would no longer wait for messages, invitations, or displays of affection. If someone wanted to be around, great. If not, that was fine too. And, surprisingly, instead of feeling lonely, Roberto felt a deep sense of relief. He realized that by letting go of expectations, he was freeing himself from a huge emotional burden. He stopped worrying about who was or wasn't in his life and started focusing on what truly mattered: his own well-being. When we learn to live without expecting anything from others, everything changes. We no longer feel obligated to maintain ties out of habit. We no longer feel anxious waiting for messages that may never come. We no longer feel frustrated when someone cancels a commitment. And, best of all, we start to value even more the moments and relationships that truly matter, without the need for control or demands. Happiness after 70 doesn't come from having a network of friends to fill your time. It comes from the freedom to live without pressures, without the need to maintain relationships out of obligation, and without the frustration of broken expectations. And when we accept this, we become lighter, calmer, and above all, happier. 6. You already have everything you need. Within you, as the years go by, we realize a truth that can completely change how we view life. Everything we truly need is already within us. For much of our lives, we seek in others what we think we lack: support, validation, companionship, distraction. But after 70, a moment of clarity arrives. We no longer need to depend on others to feel complete. The best company we can have is our own. Many people associate being alone with loneliness, but these two things are completely different. Being alone can be a gift, a moment of self-awareness and peace. When we don't need the constant presence of friends or acquaintances to feel good, we discover immense freedom. We can finally live at our own pace without needing to meet others' expectations or demands. And more than that, we learn to value our own presence. Think of Teresa, a 78-year-old woman who, for many years, believed she needed to always be surrounded by people to be happy. She had a group of friends she went out with frequently, made daily calls to chat, and always tried to stay connected. But over time, she realized that many of these interactions were superficial. When she truly needed support, few people were there for her. This made her reflect. Do I really need so many friendships to feel good? That's when Teresa began a process of rediscovery. Instead of seeking constant companionship, she started investing more time in herself. She discovered that she enjoyed long walks alone, without needing to talk to anyone. She started cooking her favorite meals without needing someone to praise her. She found pleasure in simple moments, like reading a good book or just listening to music while having coffee. Over time, she realized something surprising. She no longer felt lonely, because she had learned to be enough for herself. This is one of the greatest achievements of maturity. When we become emotionally self-sufficient, we no longer need the constant presence of friends to feel good. Of course, it's always nice to have good conversations and shared moments, but that shouldn't be a necessity. It should be a compliment. True contentment comes from within, and when we learn this, we become truly free. At 70 or older, you've already been through so many experiences, learned so much, and built a life repertoire that makes you a complete person. There's no longer a need to seek in others what you already have within yourself. Everything you need to live well is already there: your wisdom, your tranquility, your tastes and passions. The more you learn to value your own company, the less you feel the need to maintain friendships out of habit. Loneliness isn't a problem when you realize you've never truly been alone. You've always had yourself, and that in itself is enough. 7. Happiness comes from simplicity. Over time, we learn that true happiness doesn't come from grand achievements, social status, or a long list of friends. In reality, happiness comes from simplicity. After 70, we realize that it's the small things that make life worth living. A hot cup of coffee in the morning, a good book, a walk outdoors, a peaceful sunset. When we stop seeking happiness in big events and in people around us, we discover that it's always been present in the simplest things. During youth, we often worry about accumulating experiences, traveling to exotic places, maintaining a busy schedule and always being surrounded by people. But there comes a time when we realize that we don't need much to feel good. And, more than that, we discover that the best things in life are those that don't require effort, money, or a group of friends to happen. They're simply there, waiting to be appreciated. Consider the story of Antonio, an 80-year-old man who, for much of his life, believed he needed to always be surrounded by friends to feel happy. He enjoyed parties, gatherings, and social events. But as the years passed, he realized that these interactions no longer brought him the same satisfaction. Many conversations were superficial. The meetups were exhausting, and often he felt drained rather than refreshed. So, one day, he decided. To change his perspective, Antonio began to value the simple moments more. Instead of worrying about who was available to go out, he started enjoying his days at his own pace. He discovered the pleasure of waking up early and feeling the morning breeze without rush. He started savoring each meal, paying more attention to the small details of life, enjoying his own company without the need for external distractions. And, to his surprise, he realized he had never felt so at peace. Happiness after 70 doesn't come from maintaining a large circle of friends or always being busy. It comes from the lightness of living without pressures, from enjoying the present, and from accepting that life doesn't need to be complicated to be fulfilling. Often, friendships lead us to commitments we don't want, social obligations we'd rather avoid, and a pace that no longer makes sense to us. But when we learn to find joy in the small things, we realize that we don't need many connections to live well. Happiness lies in the simple act of existing, of being at peace with who we are, and of valuing the moments that truly matter. When we let go of external demands and embrace simplicity, we discover that life can be incredibly beautiful without the need for grand companionships. And so, without pressure, without expectations, without demands, we can finally enjoy life in the lightest and truest way possible. Life has a curious way of teaching us what truly matters. When we're young, we believe we need many things to be happy: a large circle of friends, social recognition, a busy routine, travels, events, plans for the future. But as the years go by, we begin to realize that true happiness doesn't come from the external, but from what we carry within us. And perhaps one of the greatest lessons maturity brings is that we don't need so many connections to live well. After 70, life takes on a new rhythm. The pressures that once seemed inescapable begin to lose their grip. There's no longer a need to prove anything to anyone. Social demands diminish. Others' opinions no longer carry the same weight. It's a time of reconnection with the essential, of simplification, of realizing that tranquility is worth more than the need to always be surrounded by people. That silence can be a gift, and that loneliness, when understood, isn't synonymous with sadness, but with freedom. It's curious to think that, for so long, we've been taught to fear loneliness. From an early age, we're told that we need friends to feel complete, that being alone is a bad thing, that isolation should be avoided at all costs. But is that really true? Or can loneliness, when lived with awareness and serenity, be one of life's richest experiences? Imagine waking up in the morning with no forced commitments, no external expectations, no obligation to respond to messages or take calls out of mere convenience. Just you, your coffee, a book in hand, or a walk in the sun. Nothing to prove, nothing to justify. Just the pleasure of existing and being present in the moment. This is the true freedom that comes with maturity. The permission to live life at your own pace in a way that makes sense to you. This doesn't mean you should isolate yourself or avoid any kind of contact. It means rather that the connections that truly matter are those that happen naturally, effortlessly, without demands or weight. If a pleasant conversation arises, great. If there's a sincere meetup, wonderful. But if none of that happens, that's okay too, because your happiness no longer depends on anyone but yourself. And perhaps this is the great revelation of this phase of life. Inner peace is worth more than any external approval. The freedom to choose who you spend your time with, the wisdom to walk away from what doesn't add value, the pleasure of living without the need to maintain appearances. The world may keep rushing outside, but you've already discovered that you don't need to rush with it. You can simply be, and that in itself is enough. So, instead of worrying about who is or isn't in your life, instead of seeking fulfillment in relationships that may no longer be necessary, why not embrace this new phase with lightness? Why not see loneliness not as an emptiness, but as fertile ground for growth, learning, and joy? Why not accept that there's nothing wrong with enjoying your own company and living life on your own terms? At 70 or older, you don't need many friends to be happy. You don't need many distractions to feel joy. You don't need to maintain ties out of habit or social convention. Everything you truly need is already with you. It always has been. And that, perhaps, is the greatest lesson of all.